This gun lights your firemen, the pilot lights out.
This football team is coming into our place. We're standing in our way.
This is a game of the heart. Focus and finish.
Welcome to Roto Experts Fantasy Football News Notes and Analysis for Wednesday, November 20th. Hey, there are two pressing things we need to talk about today because questions coming in from the viewers on this stuff is overwhelming. At least I can't keep up. Now, if any of these topics don't affect you directly, I still think that listening to the methodology on how this stuff plays out will serve you well, because at some point, these situations are going to happen to you. Now, the first thing is the concussion sustained by Redskins tight end Jordan Reed. Now, why is this a situation? What's the big deal? Well, Reed doesn't play until Monday night, and so you're probably not going to know if he's going to play or not until after all the Sunday games have concluded. So we spoke about some replacement tight ends on yesterday's segment, but you're not likely to start any of these guys above Jordan Reed, at least I don't think so. And look, the reality is there's no one right way to do this, because if you leave him in there and he plays, you're going to be fine. But if not, you're going to go with a big fat zero at the tight end spot and just 2 weeks before the playoffs start. That's something you can probably afford. Now, the only other thing I can think of is if you want to hedge your bets, is to place him in your flex spot. That'll give you an easier shot at filling the spot. But you're probably doing yourself a disservice, your entire roster, if you do that, because everything's going to be weaker that way. Now, I'd probably err on the side of caution and replace him with somebody like a Delaney Walker or someone serviceable that you can just live with, because this way, at least you'll have some expectations of certain points in the position. Now, the other topic we need to discuss is the fact that people falling all over themselves to both recommend and play Bobby Rainey for the rest of the way. Now, as you know by now, Rainey ran roughshod on the Falcons last week with 30 rushes for 163 yards, reaching the promised land twice. But here's the thing, the Falcons give up almost 133 yards per game on the ground, which is third worst in the league, and 4.6 yards per carry, which is equally as bad. Now, if you saw the game or even just watched the highlights, you or I could have run through those holes. And look, I'm not one of those who says that Rainey was an undrafted free agent out of Western Kentucky so that he can't play. Listen, he led the nation in carries in 2010, and clearly he can play. Now, I know he was waived by the Ravens and released by the Browns, but the Browns clearly made a mistake there. They made the deal of the decade getting rid of Trent Richardson, but they missed the boat on Rainey. Just look what they're left with. They had to bring Willis McGahee off the street, and now they're using Chris Ogbonnaya, or whatever his name is, to my knowledge, he's most famous for his one-time leveling of Ray Lewis in a blitz pickup last season. Now, the problem is that Rainey faces tough matchup the next 2 weeks. The Detroit Lions and the Carolina Panthers. The Lions and Panthers are 5th and 3rd against the run respectively, and he's not running the ball like a top fantasy back the next 2 weeks. Just ain't going to happen. And the Bucs are likely to have to score with the Lions this week to keep up. Detroit is 4th in the NFL in yardage at 414 yards a game, and 5th in the NFL in scoring at almost 23 points per game. Now, this week's matchup for the Bucs players are much more likely to work out for Mike Glennon, Tyquan Underwood, Tim Wright, or even Brian Leonard, all guys you could probably find on your free agent wire as well. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't add Bobby Rainey. He may be useful if you need him come playoff time, but I don't think he's a good player in either of the next 2 weeks. Today's Twitter question comes from @TomTom, who wants me to settle an argument wanting to know who the better fantasy back is, Alfred Morris or Reggie Bush. For me, it's got to be Bush, and definitely Bush in a PPR league. Look, Morris only has 3 receptions on the season, which is the fewest receptions of any back of his caliber by far, and that hurts his fantasy value when comparing him to someone like Bush. Now, if you have a question you want answered, hit me up with a tweet. And if I don't use your question on the program, I'll tweet you back with my best advice. And be sure to tune into the Roto Experts Fantasy Football News Notes and Analysis segment every weekday. I'll be here to keep you current and ahead of the competition, and on weekends, come back for This Week in Fantasy Football as I team up with the king, Scott Engel, covering the week that was and the week that will be and answering your viewer questions. For Roto Experts, I'm Mike Cardano. See you tomorrow, everyone.